Hello and welcome to another video. So we're going to be covering the Seraph Haven deck again. It's pretty much identical. I haven't made any changes to the deck at this point, but I found that it's been performing really well in ranked the last day or so, which is pretty damn crazy. When this video goes live will be 26th of July, I believe, which will be my birthday. So this is recorded in advance just so I can have that day off. And that's why, this is why we're covering this one. So we've got a few interesting games, things really close. This deck tends to be extremely close in most cases. So I think we've got Blood, Rune, and a couple other little decks here and there. So we'll get right into that. So I thought, why not start with the most meta of the decks, the Blood versus match. So they start out with a pretty solid hand, but we start out pretty well too. They do go second, which does put them at a slight disadvantage. But being against Seraph Haven, you would think Blood would actually do quite well, but no. Sadly, most of the games are really close against Blood. It's just determinant on who can do the most damage most quickly and control the board the best, really. So if Blood can deal massive amounts of damage in the early game, you're pretty screwed. If you can control the board in the early game, you pretty much win. Which, fortunately, Snow White does an amazing job at controlling that early game. If you're looking for the most optimal hand, you want something along the lines of Snow White, maybe even Hollow Dogma, Sacred Plea, any really early drops. Sometimes I even tend to keep Seraph, depending on the matchup, such as Rune, I tend to keep Seraph. Other decks, I tend to drop it just because it's too heavy for the hand in the early game when you want to be drawing into other things. So we do have Iron Maiden, which is a pretty effective card, especially against Blood, and something you want to hold on to unless you absolutely want to use it. Which is the case here. I wanted to clear this and make sure their early game was completely devoid of any decent plays. And threaten their next turn so that anything that comes down really can't do too much. Unfortunately, they do play Trove, along with a 2-drop, which is pretty optimal. Luckily, we do have another Princess. Not too much to say with this turn, you know, they're pretty straightforward. They attack, they kill, and then I have to try and counter that. Luckily, this Iron Maiden does do a good job at countering. Prison Princess getting us the draw we need. Right into that Tribunal, which will deal easily with a future drop of Abyss. So we get to clear the board, keep a couple things on, which is what you want going into turn 5. You want to limit their Bahamut plays, and that was really quite ideal. Unfortunately, Iron Maiden isn't going to last another turn, otherwise it would have been pretty good. But they do leave us with the 2-3, 2-3 that they again have to clear with the Angel. Not leaving me with many options. Like, I've got everything to set up for Seraph, but I don't have Seraph itself, and I really need to be able to drop other cards. Fortunately, Goblin Breaker is our draw, countering both these players pretty nicely. The Evolves you can pretty much just use on the Goblins, and anything else you need to really clear. I always find that's quite an effective way to use those. So unfortunately though, we don't have another way to counter spawn outside of Tribunal, which makes things more difficult. Luckily turn 6 we're not expecting a spawn. We do see the Scarlet though, meaning Tribunal unfortunately is currently our best counter, outside of a decent draw. And Monk really isn't that helpful. Maybe next turn if we don't draw Seraph, it would be helpful, but we just have to hold out for as long as we can, which is what makes this game so hard, because if you don't have Seraph turn 8, you're really pushing your limit on what you can do, making it really hard to come back in some cases. Fortunately though, limiting this Blood was really good option. There wasn't too much they were able to do. Wasting a Hollow Dogma because we have 2 healing prayers, so we've still got the 3-card combo just to remove one threat. Trying to slow them down, expecting the spawn drop. Luckily we do have double Mystics, so we do have a chance at drawing into something decent. And we finally draw Seraph that I can't play due to that spawn. Luckily Iron Maiden, probably the best card to top deck here. Fortunate because I had a few options, but this was definitely the best of them. Being able to heal up, drop our Sacred, and kill, well not kill, but limit the spawn so it cannot do any damage, and hopefully set up for the In-Statue Seraph in the following turn. Unfortunately, they do play 2 drops, meaning I have to take a pretty big risk. So I need to drop Seraph or I have no chance of winning regardless, so that had to be a play there. The other thing I had to do was get rid of that 3-3, meaning that I had a 50-50 on getting that hit. Fortunately we do, which can seal us the game. There is not much that they can play here that would do anything to us. Actually, I don't think there is anything that they could play that would have helped them, outside of maybe an Odin, which blood just doesn't run. And now we have the double Hollow Dogma Healing Prayer or double Healing Prayer Hollow Dogma could play, whichever one we want to go with in this game. And we draw the Sister Initiate, meaning we actually have 5 drop cards. We can actually drop 4 times if we chose to with the double Hollow Dogma and double Healing Prayers, but you only need 3 to proc Seraph, so that's all we needed to win this game. So this next match is against Rune. Another deck where getting lucky does help in most cases, but being able to plan out plays also helps. Again, you're aiming for most early drops, like I said. Against Rune, I did keep in Statue here. Against Blood, I don't tend to. But we also have a Hollow Dogma, so we're already part of the way through, along with the Blackened Scripture, which removes the Illusionists. Sorry, the Magical Illusionists. We don't want to confuse those for normal Illusionists. And we draw a Hollow Dogma and another Tribunal, which is really nice to fit our curve out. I weigh up whether using the Blackened Scripture here was the better option. Fortunately, we do draw Sacred Plea, which I think is slightly better. Taking 2 damage is okay. I really wanted to use the Blackened Scripture on an Illusionist, if I could, just because that value is way too nice. Luckily, we draw into a second one, so wasting 1 seems to be the right play here. So we see the Halo Golem, another card that gets punished pretty hard by Blackened Scripture, but Tribunal is just the nicer play here. Getting rid of that, keeping our Blackened for when they do drop an Illusionist so that we don't have to worry about them. And we've still got Triple Evolve and a Grimnir in hand, meaning we have a nice option to go for warding. Unfortunately, we get some pretty good draws, the Prism being a nice way to draw any other cards we need, such as the Sacred Plea that we just drew, which will proc by the Seraph play, provided it isn't returned by a Rune. You know what Rune's like. And we've controlled the board pretty well. We've taken a little bit of damage. It's a bit risky sometimes, but you've got to try and work out which you've got to weigh up. How much damage can I take versus how much do I want to take. Luckily, this Magic Illusionist does get the Banish, and we get the Princess. Princess is such a sticky card, you never really need to worry about too much. Luckily, the Tribunal does pick off this Levi though. Can't go wrong picking off a little bit of Levi. Set up our defensive play. I had to decide which way I wanted to do this, so I decided to boost the Grimnir for the extra stats and to make it a target while also playing the Heavenly Hound. Just to ward off the board for next turn so that anything that does come down can't deal face damage, and I have enough on board to trade in the next turn for when I have to play in Statue Seraph. And lucky they had no Earthrights on the board, meaning that isn't going to trigger its secondary ability. They only get the single trigger from its attack. Now I'm in a pretty good spot. We have everything we need for the Seraph combo. We can pretty much play Seraph for free due to the combo of Snow White killing off the 5-drop and the 2-4 killing off the Illusionist, which won't be able to proc itself and leaving them just with the 2-drop. I couldn't think of what would be lethal here, other than maybe a Flame Wrap, but that wouldn't even be lethal because it only 1 damage. So I couldn't come up with any way they could really proc lethal in this turn, which is pretty fortunate, meaning I can easily drop my combo for next turn, killing them off. So they pretty much just trying to play whatever they can, get as much as they can, so they can hit me in the face for an extra 3. Hoping that I don't have enough cards to combo, but with 8 in hand, what do you really expect? It's gonna go off. And Hollow Dogmas are good because they do have draw potential, meaning you can just combo draw. And the Sister Initiate for lethal. There we go. Seraphine still doing so well right now, at least when I've been playing it. And I've saved probably one of my favourite matchups for last, the Haven vs Haven match. So there's Aegis Haven minus Seraph Haven. Seraph does have an edge against Aegis, at least in my opinion, but this was extremely close just due to not really having what I needed to win at the time I needed it. So as you'll see when we get closer to the end of this matchup. So the initial start of the match is pretty normal. You know, we've got the Sacred Plea, the Snow White, and a Healing Prayer, which is a pretty good lineup for your opening hand. Any of those 1 or 2 drop cards that you can play on the early game is pretty good. We do have Heavenly Hound though, which works well with Snow White. Which is why I didn't really mind playing it right there. It's a solid card for a solid bit of stat line. They do play the Red Brand Knight, which is a newer addition to Aegis Haven that I haven't really seen much, and I only run 1 in the Seraph, mainly because yes, it is good against blood, but it is not mandatory. You are running Iron Maidens, which deal with blood more effectively in my opinion, and Red Brand is just a nice card to have at least one of for situational plays. You don't want it to be a direct counter to blood, you want this deck to do well against all decks. At least that was the aim I had in mind when playing it. So they have the Priest, which they don't get the banish on, so they pretty much leave it available to optimal trades here. Unfortunately, I do leave my board a little bit susceptible to trades as well by doing this the way I do it. Their own Priest will do quite well against this. And there is the second Priest. But they also don't evolve, which I thought was a little odd, because you'd think you would evolve here. Otherwise that just gets optimal trade value and I can play another Snow White. And since they've already used 2 Priests, the odds of them banishing the Snow White are a little lower. Not as low as I would have liked them, but just a tiny little bit more. Fortunately, board clear, giving us a 2-3. Like I said, damage isn't important, but where you can get it, you may as well take it. Makes it harder for them. And if you have to, you can just hit them. Which one of my matches I did do that with today, but I didn't think it was exciting enough to put up. Alrighty. So Snow White goes for the Evolve. Not really doing much, I guess they were just aiming for that. Luckily though, the Blackened Scripture trades with the Snow White perfectly, banishing it and removing its abilities. Lining up for the turn 8 Seraph, where we have 2 cards for our combo already in hand. Maybe it wasn't this match. This is still an alright match though. Match I was thinking about, I believe that I went Seraph into like Hollow Dogma into Hollow Dogma, but maybe it wasn't this one. Either way. Or maybe, I can't remember now. Either way, they play their Aegis, they get a 10 drop. When they evolve, of course. If they evolve. Us on the other hand, we have no way of drawing. Luckily we draw into our second Sister and shit. Otherwise we would have been in a more risky spot, I guess. So this wasn't too bad. I did like this matchup just because Aegis Haven is a fun thing to verse with this deck, because they never expect just to drop Seraph. They expect to be mirroring, and when they're going first they expect to win. But with Seraph you tend to win even if you go second against other Haven decks, so quite fun. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. We'll have more content coming out as normal, you know. Every day we'll have content. Destiny 2 content will be coming as soon as Destiny 2 launches. I had a lot of fun with the beta. It was quite enjoyable. Hopefully you guys enjoy all that too, and that's pretty much it. This deck didn't do great against Shadow. That was probably my biggest loss area. I think it's just because I don't have enough to deal with a lot of their last word effects. But other than that, I hope you guys enjoy it. Hit the link in the description if you want this deck list, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya.